On a second, Mayor.
Just want to make sure you thought that through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really.
Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome home to the Maplewood Township building here. It's always nice to be back here. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2017 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2016, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Here. Mr. Larrier? Here. Mr. Lembrick?
Here. Good night, Cece.
Mr. McGehee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies to be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desire this governing body to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation and deliberation of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome to the October 3rd meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. I'm going to go through the agenda quickly. We're going to have a proclamation that Mr. Lembrick, as chair of the Public Safety Committee, will give for Fire Prevention Week, and we'll ask our firefighters to come up at that time. We'll also have a proclamation on Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we'll have a public comment period. Monthly Board of Health meeting. After that, we have 7 discussion items, best practice inventory, our January budget hearing dates we'll be discussing, car and bus idling, the library expansion plan, a statement supporting the retention of local and state tax exemption under the proposed federal changes to the tax code, and also a statement asking President Trump to release his taxes. We'll be talking about planning assistance from the state, 1 for the Maplewood Village vision for the future, and 2 for pedestrian safety and traffic calming. And 7, we'll be talking about the crane safety ordinance. Our consent agenda is a resolution authorizing the purchase of the public safety cameras, a contract for marketing recyclables, sale of personal property and equipment, appointment, submitting of a mutual aid grant, appointing an emergency management coordinator, and Mr. Manning, approving bills and claims, and approving the closing of a window replacement library at the Hilton Library. Window replacement contract at the Hilton Library. We'll be approving the minutes of August 21st and September 5th. And I skipped one item number 185. We will be talking about that right after the Board of Health meeting. And that's a resolution approving a settlement with Robert Cimino. And I want to mention on that resolution, I know some of you are here to talk about that. There's been a change to the resolution, or to the agreement. After hearing comments Sunday at the March for Racial Justice, and also comments we've received from other members of the community, we've gone back to, I called our attorney on Monday. We went back to Mr. Semino, and we have an agreement that we will not be providing the letter stating that he served with dedication and professionalism. All other aspects of the agreement will remain as written. What I would suggest is if you want to speak on Resolution 185-17, come up right before we consider it, as opposed to 2 spots before that. So we'll leave our public comment for anything other than the Resolution 185. We'll do a quick Board of Health meeting. Then we'll go back to Resolution 185-17, and anyone who wants to speak on it, come up at that time. We'll listen to your comments, and then we'll have our discussion and take a vote. Okay, so first up, Mr. Lembrecht, Fire Prevention Week.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The officers from our fire department come up and join me.
You guys can get closer to Mr. Lembrecht over
He's
there.
not going to bite
Yeah, I mean,
you. They've heard about him.
My reputation precedes me.
I told them all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Whereas the Township of Maplewood is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting Maplewood, fire departments responded to over 365,000 home fires in 2015, and home fires resulted in over 2,500 civilian deaths that year, representing the majority of all U.S. fire deaths. Whereas newer homes are built with lightweight materials that burn faster than older homes, and these conditions contribute to a much smaller window of time for people to escape a home fire safely, with people having as little as 1 to 2 minutes to escape from the time the smoke alarm sounds. Fire escape plan provides the skill set and know-how to quickly and safely escape a home fire situation. And whereas home fire escape plans should be developed by all members of the household and practiced twice a year. And whereas the 2017 Fire Prevention Week theme, "Every Second Counts, Plan 2 Ways Out," effectively serves to educate the public about the vital importance of developing a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practicing it twice a year. Therefore, Victor DeLuca, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, does hereby proclaim October 8th through October 14th, 2017 as Fire Prevention Week in the Township of Maplewood. And we urge all residents of Maplewood to find and develop a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practice it twice a year, and to participate in the many public safety activities and efforts of Maplewood's Fire and Emergency Services Departments during Fire Prevention Week 2017. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Lembrecht, maybe you can coax one of them to say something. Anybody want to say anything?
On behalf of the department, I just want to thank you for your continued support.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next up, we have the Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Well, Mayor, given my personal circumstance at the moment, I'd rather you read that.
So this is a proclamation for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, whereas breast cancer will affect 1 in 8 women in the United States and will be diagnosed, 1 in 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer. And whereas breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in women and is the second leading cause of cancer death among women. In 2017, more than 250,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed among women and more than 2,400 cases in men in the United States. A woman's risk of breast cancer nearly doubles if she has a first-degree relative, mother, sister, daughter who has been diagnosed with breast cancer. Improvements in early detection and effective treatment have contributed to a 38% decline in breast cancer deaths in the United States between 1989 and 2014. And whereas over 3.1 million breast cancer survivors are alive in the United States today from early detection through mammograms and treatment. Now, therefore, I, Victor DeLuca, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2017 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Accordingly, I encourage all our citizens to join with their communities in participation of Breast Cancer Month activities. This is a very serious disease. My mom passed away from breast cancer. And we all have someone in our families who have had to go through this horrible disease. So we use this month to highlight it and encourage everyone to get screening and testing done and pay attention to those who are suffering from this and be as supportive as possible. Next up, we'll have our first public comment session. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee? And other than Resolution 185-17? Sergeant?
Good evening, Council. I'm laughing at that. I'm starting to feel like a regular coming in front of you guys. But Council, with an issue that's passionate to me, that I'm hearing since my retirement, I've been involved. I'm still involved in the community. I just want to commend this Council because this Council has made excellent strides in changing the culture of the Maplewood Police Department. In the 20 years that I work here, under the former administration, the culture was one of a punitive nature, which led our officers to have a punitive way of policing. Now we find ourselves as a community in an excellent position to change the culture of this police department. And the mentor program that's being created is an excellent procedure to start this process. It changes our culture from one of reactive policing to one of proactive policing. I support a program like this because, as the mayor knows, I did this from 2002 to 2012 with officers mentoring youth in this community. The last time I stood before this council, you guys asked me, what can you do to help me? I informed you of our open gym that we're having. So I just want to give you an update on the open gym that we had in May. It's been sponsored by Coliseum Gym, Diamond Gym, and Eternal Light for the whole year this year. Friday, work with the mentoring program that's being created. We're partnering with the Loft, who's having a father and son night in our open gym. This community is doing great things with our officers. And so I beg you to get behind this mentor program that's being creative. This council has taken courageous steps in revamping our police department, and I beg you to stand behind our officers as they take part in this mentoring program that I hear there's being resistance for. And if we be honest, there are those who will resist these efforts of our officers simply because they wear the uniform. And I stand before you, council, and I will compare my commitment to the youth of this community to anyone who has any dissension. But I know firsthand, because for the 27 years I've had people in the community that resisted me, are fully aware of. But this mentor program is something good. The open gym is something good. These committed officers, let's assist them with this mentoring program in this open gym. And let's ignore those who want to be divisive in our town. And I've been retired 5 years. I still consider this my town. And so let's support this mentoring program that's being creative for our youth. And I just have a sidebar, and this is personal, that I was following news that we want to have a national search, and this is personal for me, that a national search for a police chief. I don't want to see someone that gets 6 figures to come into our town and apply scholarly managerial leadership methods to our town. We have upper level officers here that are concerned and are connected to our community in our town. And I'm encouraging this town, as you have a national search, to look at the fine officers, the fine that we have in this community, to take this town further in a community policing oriented way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee?
Good evening, Township Committee and other members present of the community. My name is Dean Daffis. I reside at 12 Maple Terrace, and my comments tonight relate to the report that came out from the independent consultant that was hired, Hillard and Hines, that was hired to look into the incident of July 5th, 2016, and give recommendations for us going forward. I want to make clear that my comments tonight are on behalf of the Community Coalition of Race, as a trustee, and not personal comments and not comments as a political candidate. We want to go on record to say that we agree with the recommendations in the report. We also would like to note and remind you that we came before you. Our Executive Director, Nancy Gagne, and our Chair, Robert Marchman, met with you last spring to discuss the need for better training of our officers and the need to really turn our culture around and make our law enforcement agency a more progressive one and improve our relationships in the community, including the need for greater community engagement, particularly with our youth, which is also in the report. We find it remarkable that the report is very silent as to any anti-bias training. In fact, I've read the report twice, and I think the word anti-bias does not appear in it once. So we want to bring that to your attention. We think anti-bias training and cultural competency training remains a vital, pertinent, and important aspect of this process going forward. And we, the Community Coalition on Race, would like to play a very active role in that. We have, as you know, particular expertise in the matter. Our schools committee has been helping our teachers and supervisors and administrators in the schools be trained and get greater resources into cultural competency training. Stand in solidarity with the other community groups in our community with respect to their demands and their recommendations as we move forward as a community, and turning our police department and making it more inclusive to reflect who we are here in Maplewood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to address the Township Committee?
A little slower these days, since we're all kind of skipping the order. My name is Kelly Quirk. I live at 152 Parker Avenue, and chair of SOMA Action's Immigrants' Rights Committee, and I wanted to talk both about the report released by Hillard Hines and then also in relation to the settlement regarding Chief Cimino. It's a combination. I appreciate the change in the letter of recommendation that was given as per community concern. And I learned several pieces of information from reading the report front to back. And I'm going to give you, Chair of the Public Safety Committee, if I may, my own markups. Of the things I learned is we need to invest in the training for our officers more in de-escalation, in crowd control, and how to appropriately challenge authority when there's concerns of inappropriate behavior. And we expect you guys to hold them accountable for that. The department doesn't engage in true community policing, but it's focused on traffic and pedestrian concerns, and that needs to change. The officers on duty that night didn't challenge authority even when they had concerns. And as someone who manages a shop and a union shop at that, that's concerning. People should feel the need, if they're concerned, to challenge their supervisors and say something's wrong here. And there was a considerable lack of management at the top, and lack of positive relationships within the department, a department that requires key vision, leadership, and most importantly, some backbone to make a change. So what I offer you in that report are some changes. There's only one reference in there to minority youth. So I corrected it for you. Because the youth who were led out of town were youth of color. They were led past my house to Irvington and not to Milburn, and we all know why. There's no reason to be coy about it. There's no reason we can't talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, nothing will change. We have to stop pretending it's make-believe, and we need leadership to have a spine. I have one. So there's 23 times where I made markups in red, where I felt the consultants missed something. They didn't give you the full picture. I agree with their recommendations for better training, and I agree with CCR's recommendations in SOMA Justice to have an improved anti-bias training and supervisors who are committed to it to hold their line staff accountable. Our recommendations are what the community also recommended in SOMA Justice's demand letter. So this brings me to the settlement agreement. I did the release of the video. I understand you guys were unable to comment. The settlement agreement has an item that basically also gags us from talking about Chief Cimino's behavior publicly in the future, and that concerns me. So if our town officers felt the culture was such that they couldn't speak up on that night, and our town officials aren't really allowed to speak because of this agreement or because of legal matters, that leaves us as the community, as the people who have to continually come here and speak truth to power, which we will do over and over and over again. We need a change in leadership, that's true, but we need more. We need a change in the culture that's going to take vision, leadership, dedication, and backbone, and where that comes from should have community input as well. And most importantly, we need you, our elected officials, to take hold of those taking on this incredibly important task, hold them accountable for the goals we set to them. Black lives matter and immigrant lives matter, and you need to do more than just say it at a rally. You need to hold the people who are making those decisions accountable each and every day. And if you can't, the rest of us who are in it for the long haul, the backbone required, are going to hold you accountable for it in the end anyway. So I appreciate that you're listening to our changes. We look forward to a continued working relationship regarding as we move forward with the department. But that report sugarcoats something that doesn't need to be sugarcoated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Khadijah Costley White. I live at 202 Lexington. Thank you. I'm shorter apparently than everybody else. 202 Lexington Avenue. I wasn't planning on speaking, which is why I'm doused in over here. And the baby is why I will have to sneak out a little bit early. But I do want to speak in response to the officer on behalf of the mentoring program. I have been trying not to speak too much on the mentoring program, but I do want to make it clear to the town council and to the town leadership that the onus is not on children to prove themselves worthy or prove themselves human or prove themselves active in communicating and touching base with police officers. I'm not sure if officers are compensated for the time that they spend when they're mentoring children, but if so, I can think of better uses of town money and police officer time than interacting with children. I think, and I hope I'm speaking to a number of other residents, that officers have to prove themselves. I think there's been not much time since 2016. None of us, at least none of us outside of the town council, know the officers that were involved in hurting children. I trust the town council, especially Councilman McGee, to make sure that he's vetting the officers who are participating properly, but we don't know. We have no clear accountability, no clear transparency around what happened to the officers, the consequences that came of what happened in July. And who did it, right? And so we have an officer speaking up for a mentoring program where we don't know who's there and we don't know what they're doing exactly. I think I just want to emphasize that whatever solutions we take and whatever steps we take next should be based on evidence, and not based on just feelings. I'm sure that officers feel a connection with children and that this program might be important and that other solutions might be fueled by feelings and emotions, but I hope that you guys all look across the country and see what steps have measurable impact to address the issues that we have here. And that's basically it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Acting Captain Albert Sally, Maplewood Police Department. I thought I had to talk tonight. We do have officers that are very committed to community service or community policing that have been for years, including myself. I'm just going to name a few programs we have done in the past: DARE, LEAD, Open Gyms, Police Academy, Mentor Program, Teen Pool Night, National Night Out. So we have been committed. And we do have a core amount of officers, good officers in our department that are still committed, and we back the Mentor Program, and we believe we can make a difference in, with the new administration, with a community policing approach. So we have good committed officers here, all races that are committed and have. So we are ready to move forward and meet with the community. We're able to come to meetings like this and speak about it and show our commitment, and that's what I got to say about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Good evening. My name is Erin Scherzer. I live at 49 Oberlin Street, and I'm speaking today as a trustee of the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race. Appreciate the most recent Hillard Hines report that came out. It was helpful to see information of what happens behind the police force, information that some of us, through our work and just regular conversations with officers, were able to hear. I do want to point out on behalf of the coalition that the movement that you see that's happening in town, that you see groups of people of all different backgrounds, all different income brackets, every towns, it wasn't just about what happened on July 5th, 2016. In fact, the negative interactions that the community of color, particularly the Black members of our community, have faced with law enforcement are longstanding. This is just one incident. One incident that just happened to be caught on tape, but it's a systemic of a long-standing issue within our police force. And what I hope is that when you read the report, it focuses very much on de-escalation, and that is very important. But the list of policy proposals that were put forth by Soma Justice and supported by a number of organizations that have come together on this go much deeper than the many public events we have. It goes forward in terms of addressing true social justice reform in terms of our policing department. And so while yes, I think the Hillard Hines report is important, and yes, I respect that the township has invested significant money in that report, many volunteers in this community have donated their time for free to be able to put forth well-researched recommendations. And these are more, officer, than scholarly reports. This is information that actually comes from people who live in the community, people who have had negative interactions with police and have actually worked to make policy changes and recommendations to move forward. So I ask that we look at all of these things in the totality. It's important to remember that we do leverage the community talent here. The Community Coalition on Race has always been focused on integration. That was the central focus of our organization. Over the past year, even before the changes in our national political landscape, we've had hundreds of people come out to our conversations on race and coffee house discussions, filling the Woodland, filling Montrose School on a snowy Saturday afternoon to talk about issues of race. Our community is prepared to address these issues, and I ask that you leverage those talents. Our budgets are limited as a municipality, and we have people here who are ready to act. In terms of integration, it's while we may celebrate that property values have increased in our municipality, the downside of that is that we lose the opportunity for members of municipal workers to be able to afford to live in our community. These programs are important that we have these the interactions back and forth. Yes, no one will disagree with that. But the interaction is more than a superficial level. My professional background comes in professional development. Mentoring is not a one-way street. Mentoring is a two-way street. And I would hope that with every program that's in place, that the individuals that are learning from those who are in the community, who are the officers, are learning from the community, that they're taking opportunities to engage more with our community. It's not just about one-off events. It's about the regular interaction. It's about making sure that we understand people who live here, and then people who don't live here, they should be treated with the exact same dignity and respect as people who live and pay taxes within our town. So I hope that in terms of integration, in terms of keeping our community moving forward, that you leverage the incredible resources that we have here, particularly led by all the individuals that you see here and many more that can't be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carrie Gordon from 34 Girard Place. I hadn't planned to speak tonight, but I have a middle school child, and I'm speaking about the mentoring program there. It was wrong to introduce this program while the police force was under investigation as a way to remedy them before there was professional anti-bias training, and this report from the Hines. And I also feel that Black families have the talk with their kids about how to interact with police. And that talk across the board includes you listen to anything the police tells you to do. You don't question it. You comply. I think that's wrong to have a mentor that you're given that talk, and then you're expected to interact with that person that you're not supposed to question at all. And that's a dangerous situation if it's a one-on-one situation. That's a perfect abuse. Thank you very much.
Hello again. My name is Kasha Pikars. I live at 491 Prospect Street, and I am here on behalf of Soma Justice. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that we were very disappointed with the agreement with former Police Chief Semino, especially the letter of commendation. And while we're happy that that letter is no longer part of the deal, it's still a serious blunder that it was part of the deal in the first place, and I think shows just how far we all have to come in terms of reconciling with these sorts of issues. And so we implore you once again to review the demands and recommendations we submitted 4 weeks ago by the next Township Council meeting, and hope that you'll consider as an important next step meeting with key community leaders to begin discussing how we can make real and not just symbolic progress toward a more socially just policing program. As part of those initial steps, we've already begun reaching out to other communities that have had some success in making important changes. That's sort of the first place to go, is how do we do this, and how do we do this effectively? This includes actually reaching out to the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, who's recently profiled in New York Magazine about some critical steps that he pioneered in his town: better tracking, better training for his police officers, a public committee that helps, public oversight committee that helps with all of this. We've reached out to him, and he's willing to speak to you all about how he got started and what he did. So when you're ready, we're ready to make that connection. Quick and decisive action here can help reverse the negative impression that this deal, as well as everything else that has happened here recently and long going into the past, has made and on track toward real positive change that will make everybody feel like we're going in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay, we're going to close the first public hearing. Again, if you want to speak specifically on Resolution 18517, we'll have another time for you to do that. We're going to move into our Board of Health meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law, 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2017 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2016, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk. Mr. Adams? Here. Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mr. McGehee?
Here.
Mrs. Flower here. Here. 31, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7 provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desire the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provisions of this act, same time conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Adams? Yes. Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier? Yes. Thank you. Welcome to the October Board of Health meeting. By approving the minutes from September 5th.
Move.
Second. Ms. Adams? Yes. Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier? Yes, thank you. Barbara, it's my pleasure. I have a proclamation for our public health nurse who actually has retired. And if I can have you join me at the podium along with your family. Mr. Rowe? Thank you. An appreciation of the list, and I will be reading this in its entirety. Whereas Barbara earned a degree from Columbia University in Bachelor's of Science Nursing, BSN, in 1972, and began her public health nursing career in 1973 in the city of Orange as a public health nurse, and was promoted to public health nursing supervisor. And whereas Barbara continued her public health nursing supervisor career, working for both the townships of Maplewood and Millburn starting in 1980, and improved to modern standards the nursing programs in child health clinics, school nursing, senior services, and health education. And whereas Barbara worked diligently to control communicable diseases in Maplewood that included the public health challenges of AIDS, meningitis, measles,
Giardiasis.
thank you, giardiasis, tuberculosis, West Nile virus, hepatitis viruses, Ebola virus, Lyme disease, and other tick-borne illnesses, salmonella, norovirus, and so on and so on and so on. And whereas Barbara organized clinics and health education programs to assist and educate the public on chronic diseases prevention such as heart disease,
high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, shingles, falls prevention, skin cancer, and other chronic diseases. And whereas Barbara is a founding member of the Suburban Essex Public Health Nursing Supervisors Association that serves to keep all public health nurses in Essex County up to date on modern public health nursing practice, and Barbara has personally trained over 20 public health nurses under her supervision. And whereas Barbara has always conducted herself in a professional manner and assisted all Maplewood residents in a courteous, friendly, welcoming manner, is a friend to all her colleagues in public health and fellow Maplewood Township employees. On this third day of October 2017, the Maplewood Township Committee and Board of Health recognize and commend the services of Barbara Begist to the residents of the Township of Maplewood and offer her their best regards and best wishes on her retirement.
Thank you, Ms. Larian, Mayor and the Township Committee. This is a real honor and one I never expected. Working for the Township of Maplewood has been a rewarding career for me. It sure doesn't seem like 37 years. I don't know where the time went. I'm privileged to work with Bob Rowe, who has always been supportive, and many extremely professional nurses and wonderful dedicated employees in the Township of Maplewood. I started out as a health hospital nurse, but public health has always been my passion. I've investigated diseases from avian flu to now Zika. I guess you could say I've seen everything. It's so important to keep the residents of Maplewood healthy, and I'm proud to have made a small contribution. I'm humbled and honored to accept this proclamation. Thank you again. Thanks, Bob.
Oh, my goodness.
And I would just like to give my own personal thanks to Barbara for all the work that you've done, and you will be missed around here, I'm sure. Mr. Rowe, perhaps we can get your report.
Yes. A couple of things I wanted to just stress is that the federal government is not doing advertising or helping people sign up for the Affordable Health Care Act this fall. And so if we can find somebody who can work with us at the health department, we'd be happy to work with them and continue to sign up people during the appropriate sign-up period. I think it starts in November. And you know, just because the federal government isn't advertising, it doesn't mean that we can't do it. So I don't know if any of you know of organizations. I'll try to search out some, and we'll try to sign up as many people as we can, because it's still the law of the land. We should have health insurance.
To that point, Mr. Rowe did reach out to actually New Jersey Citizen Action regarding the possibility of finding someone to help work with them. In turn, they have reached out to the Outreach and Enrollment Work Group that actually had its first meeting today. And they are going to be setting up some programming for municipalities in New Jersey to help promote outreach and enrollment, and to funnel municipalities such as ours into existing enrollment assisters. So they do know about us. I did speak with them, and that should be coming forthwith.
Good, okay, I'd like to know that. We'll advertise the services. And of course, people can still, I believe, sign up by themselves online. That fact also.
Mrs. Adams.
Mr. Rowe, what are the dates of the ACA sign-up?
I
Off the
don't,
top of your
I'm
head?
sorry to say, I don't know exactly.
Okay. And
November 1st through December 15th.
November 1st? Okay, thank you.
It's cut short by about half this year.
Yeah, because it usually goes into January.
Yes, so he
Thank
cut
you,
it short.
Mr. Trump. Mr. Manning, can we get this advertised through the township and social media from your office so that we can get that out on a regular basis?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Tomorrow afternoon at 5:15, we're having our meeting of the Maplewood Municipal Alliance, and I think many of you have been involved at one point or the other. That's our anti-alcohol and drug abuse alliance. We work under a grant from the state of New Jersey. It's largely devoted to educational projects and activities that will help prevent children from decision to abuse alcohols and drugs. I heard Sergeant Morrison talk about mentoring, and then I heard some other audience members talking about mentoring. One of the programs that the Alliance helps fund through the Parenting Center are mentoring programs. And it's mentoring programs where high school kids mentor elementary age school kids. And we're also going to expand it to middle-aged students. And it's been wildly successful. I don't know quite how it works with police officers, but I know when it's students mentoring students, they both benefit. It is a two-way street. The student who's being mentored is encouraged to do better at school, and the older student who's the mentor has to live up to this standard, so they wind up doing better at school. So, and we do have evidence on that, because they talk about evidence-based, and we do have evidence showing that the mentoring program is very successful. So what I would add, I've heard a lot of talk, we also have helped fund a lot of police youth programs in town over the years, and we want to continue to do that. And I would invite, I heard several people comment that they have ideas about things that could be done. So I would welcome their input and to see if we can work some of those ideas into the Municipal Alliance program. We have lots of rules we have to follow, as you know. But if we can work them in to improve police relations and youth relations, and I think that will all have a good effect on preventing drug abuse. It'll just make our community a better place to live all around. So I would invite anyone who has good ideas to contact me, and we'll see if we can work them in. The Municipal Alliance meeting tomorrow at 5:15 is a public meeting, so anyone is welcome to come. Finally, I know there was some discussion about my recommendations for improving the garbage storage. I don't know quite where we stand with that.
No, there has been.
We haven't done anything with that yet. We're waiting to meet with the code committee.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll look forward to that then.
Already met at code. So I think you're supposed to come back to code, right?
You're going to come back, and Mr. Desiderio's coming to our next meeting, which is
Right.
the 10th.
Okay.
Change the ordinance to address some of the issues we have with dumpsters.
Very good, okay.
That's
And I just finally do the last thing on the breast cancer. We've had 2 of our public health nurses die of breast cancer, as I recall, Barbara, and it's very sad. They were far too young, and they were in the prime of their life, and they died of breast cancer. So it does affect everyone. That's my report.
Any questions for Mr. Rowe? None. I will invite anyone who cares to come and address the Board of Health. No one? And a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are on item number 9 on the agenda. It's Resolution 185-17.
Mayor, item number 9, Resolution 185-17, is a resolution approving settlement with Robert Semino.
Mr. Desiderio, we need your,
Expertise. Help at the mic. We need you.
I have a question for you. We need to amend this. How would, the resolution is the resolution. We're not
Resolution is the
amending
resolution, the
right?
agreement will strike, you'll pass the resolution striking that portion that you addressed earlier.
Okay.
We'll actually, we'll strike it, and if the resolution passes, you'll sign it, and the agreement will be final.
Okay. Okay. So before we ask for a motion and a second and have a discussion and vote, I'll ask if there's anyone who would like to speak on this resolution 185-17, resolution approving a settlement with Robert Semino.
Hi, I'm Heather Soslovsky of 25 Porter Road. I originally came because I wanted to talk about the letter you've now taken off the table, and that's great, but I'm a little confused as to how that was so simple and why everything else on the table is not equally as simple. I initially assumed, as a lawyer, that this was a really careful weighing of how much it was going to cost, and that each and every provision on the table was a hard-fought fight. And now it seems it's not quite that clear. And so I'm wondering why you're paying a man for 2 years. I understand the unused sick time. All of that made sense in a legal way, even though it felt uncomfortable as a resident, given what went on. But you're paying him for 2 years. If I were to do something wrong and get fired, no one would offer me $115,000 to not be here or to not be at my job. And it appears that you've offered him that for 2 years. And it appears that you've offered him pretty much anything anyone could think of. And the only thing that seems to have come off the table is this letter, and it came off rather quickly. So if it's that simple to go back to his lawyer and take the letter off the table, I'm wondering how hard this was negotiated. I understand no one wants to be caught up in litigation for years and that that would cost this town quite a bit of money. But I also don't understand why you would rush to any settlement before the report came out. You hired independent consultants and you negotiated something before you had their report.
Anyone else want to address this resolution? Seeing no one, will close the hearing for this resolution. Can we get a motion and a second?
Mr. Mayor, I move the adoption of Resolution 185-17.
Second.
Okay, so this is the resolution that's amended with the removal of the letter referenced on the serving with distinction for 36 years. So let me just address some of the comments that were just made. This wasn't an easy removal. We spent the last 30 hours probably working on it. The other aspects that were mentioned about someone doing something wrong, the difficulty we have is that the Essex County prosecutor found that he did not do anything wrong. I know, it says, okay, we don't do that. Okay. So I won't respond to the speaker. I'll make my own comments. The difficulty with the resolution, and I think we are clear that we're going to vote on this. Those of us that will vote on this are going to have some reluctancy in voting for it, but we feel that it is the best solution we could get. We are stuck with a ruling prosecutor that says that he was not criminally found. They also found that the best practices, there was not anything to substantiate it, and they closed the case. There are state laws that protect police officers, limit our ability to act and take disciplinary measures. We followed the procedures that were required. This is a very difficult decision, but it is the best one to get Mr. Cimino from not coming back to run the Maplewood Police Department. And that's the end goal, is to remove him from running the Maplewood Police Department. And so we will vote reluctantly, but we will close this and we'll move on to doing some of the things that were talked about earlier and finding a new chief, working with that chief to make the changes that are necessary and moving forward as a community. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to say a few things.
Sure.
Just to clarify the role of the Essex County prosecutor here in two ways. The Essex County prosecutor made decisions within their authority. Not only did Mr. Cimino not violate any criminal law, but also because he's the chief, so therefore Maplewood Police Department's internal affairs process can't basically be investigated by officers who report to you. So it goes up to the Attorney General, says it goes up to the prosecutor's office to determine basically internal affairs and departmental discipline. And they concluded, for reasons that were never made clear to us in any respect, that there was no internal affairs or departmental discipline for Mr. Cimino that was appropriate for the events of that evening. As some people are probably tired of hearing me say, no transparency, no disclosure at all from the Essex County prosecutor, no explanation, no report, no listing of who they interviewed, what evidence they saw, what evidence they didn't see, why they made the decision they did. There was a few sentences in a half-page letter that just stated the conclusion. And based on their conclusions, it left us, the charges that we had left, if we were to pursue official charges against Mr. Cimino, were very limited. And to things that, in the judgment of counsel and experienced people in this area, we were told would not, even if sustained, lead to termination being results. So we were put in a position where we, as representatives of the community, felt that he had to go. But negotiations, settlements are about leverage and what we can negotiate. And, I think that the payment that's being made, as the mayor said, is something we have to swallow hard on. It isn't 2 years' salary. I believe his salary at the time he left was 170, was in 179. So it was just under 180,000 a year. He's getting 115. That difference in math makes it only slightly easier for me, but it's what we could negotiate. Our other option, if we wouldn't agree to this, was to engage in a costly, lengthy legal battle that we were told told there was a very strong possibility we would lose. And if we did, first of all, he would be on leave and being paid in the meantime. We'd be paying him for the next year or two anyway, his full $179,000. And if we lost that fight, he would be reinstated as chief, and there'd really be nothing further we could do. So, it was about leverage. It's about what we can negotiate. And, as the mayor said, there were developments in the past couple of days, and I wasn't privy to the negotiations, so I feel that I can speculate without revealing anything that one party felt that this deal might be, the settlement agreement might be in jeopardy. It still needed to be approved by the 5 people up here, or at least a majority of us, and that some of us might vote no if that weren't removed. It would be more likely to vote yes if it was removed. So again, there was sort of some leverage there. But I feel comfortable in voting for this, that this is a far better solution than this point. It's not what I would have liked, but nothing about this process is what I would have liked. And a lot of this is just authority that is not within the township's power. And I think it's a terrible system that we as the elected representatives of this community are extremely limited in the authority we have over the people who are policing this community. And that someone in that position, the decision is made behind closed doors in a closed process with no transparency. Even it's not even that there's not something we can tell the public. There was nothing to us. There was nothing to our attorney. There was nothing to our township administrator. And I think that process stinks. I think I've made that clear. But it's not within my power to change it, at least as it stands right now. It's something that I'd like to push our state representatives to explore changing. I think communities should have more control over the people who are policing their communities. But that's not the way the law is right now, and we have to deal with the status quo. And the status quo is Mr. Semino could no longer be the chief here, and we needed to negotiate the best deal we could with what leverage we had. So I'm reluctantly going to vote yes to support this agreement and allow us as a township and the police department to move on.
Anyone else? Adams.
Well, I was going to say a lot of what Mr. Lembrick just said, but he said it so eloquently. Our hands were tied, in essence, in large part, by the powers of the police unions and protection by law given to chiefs of police and given to members of law enforcement. That's the bottom line. So you may not like or agree with, neither do any of us, really. But can I talk now? I didn't interrupt you. So all I'm saying is we can't do what we want to do. That's the grown-up world we live in. So if, like many other things, if members of the community are upset with something, then work with your legislators on a higher level to change the laws, to change the union agreements, to change the things that keep our hands more tied than we would like them to be. So I'm reluctantly going to be voting yes on this as well, because I think it's fiscally responsible for us to do so, rather than go into prolonged legal arguments, legal fights, courtroom, and all of that goes with it, and then in the end up with Chief Semino as chief.
Mrs. Larry.
Yes, I understand, and I will not reiterate what my colleagues have already said, because they've said it very well twice. For me, I think it comes to we need to move on. And when I say move on, I don't mean forget and move on and keep the status quo. I think we need to close the Semino chapter, and this does that in the best way that we have at our disposal. And then working with the community, working with the police, working with the report that we've gotten from Hillard and Hines, working with our township administrator, working with our lawyers, and once again, working with the community. You're all here because you want to see us move forward in a better way. Really, the best way to do that is to close this chapter and move on. And yes, we don't like it. It didn't happen the way we wanted it to. But as has been said, we could have him here for 2 more years as we litigate this. This is the way that we begin to move on, that we begin to look at the suggestions and the recommendations that we've been given from many different people, and that I'm sure we will continue to get probably into the next year. This is the way that we begin to look to new leadership for the police department. This is the way that we begin to change that culture, as you yourselves said is so necessary, and we certainly agree with you. So I understand that it's not so palatable, but understand that it's not so palatable for us either. It's a difficult first step. I'm hoping, I'm praying that it is the first step. And so I will also be voting for it, if for no other reason than that.
Mr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I enter the 10th month of my tenure or term on the TC, this vote tonight is probably the last bitter pill that I've had to swallow over several months when dealing with this issue. Time after time again, understanding and realizing our position of power, those who are empowered and what they've done to us in terms of my colleagues have talked about, which has basically tied us up and not given us the ability to do the things we really want to do, and had to digest and absorb some of the things that we've had to do, both that are confidential and also public. This is not an easy vote. This is not an easy decision. This has not been an easy process for us. Firmly that my colleagues are not happy tonight about what we have to do, but we're doing it for the better of the community. It's what needs to be done to move forward. I know many will understand that, and people look at the financial part of the deal and other things, but at the end of the day, I can guarantee you that everyone up here with me worked tirelessly, along with our attorneys, to find the best solution for our community. It's not perfect, but as we found out over the last months, this process is far from perfect. And we're trying to move forward. We're trying to move forward internally, externally, with officers in our community, and with our community, and also as a community. So please have the faith in us that we will continue to work hard for you and to move forward, to build and rebuild and reestablish a police force and a community that we all can be proud of. I will be voting yes tonight, and I will swallow this last pill and do so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, before we vote, I would like to ask a question of Mr. Desiderio, just to confirm my understanding. And that is, we did receive the report from Hillard Hines. The report from Hillard Hines was critical in several respects of the command on the night of July 5, 2016. So while that might have given us additional information that we didn't have, or additional analysis that we didn't have, it's my understanding that the Essex County Prosecutor's Office essentially precluded us from bringing any charges with respect to, their finding precludes us from bringing any further charges regarding the events of that evening. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay. So nothing that was in the Hillard Hines report, regardless of how critical or how new the information might be about that night, could be the basis for for charges against Mr. Semino.
Relating to the incident of July 5th, 2016, you are correct.
Okay, that's my understanding. Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes. Would like to just add that I think at some point in the future, when we have a new governor, we need to have a conversation with that governor about requiring independent investigations when police chiefs are, and any executive member of the police department receives a complaint. I think the relationship between the police and the county prosecutor is way too close.
Yeah, totally.
For an independent investigation. This is an attorney general requirement, and I think when we have a new governor, we ought to sit down with the new attorney general and relay our case to him or her and have this conversation about looking at this and setting up something
Different.
different than what we had here.
Agreed.
I agree with that.
Okay. Discussion items, we have 7. Mr. Manning, best practice inventory for 2017.
Yes, Mayor, you have all received a copy of our, good, okay. All right, then I would like to just keep this off the agenda.
I don't believe we
What was
received
that?
a copy.
What's that?
I usually keep
Did you have a
pretty good
spasm?
track of stuff.
I think he might have realized
No,
that
I-
might have been this.
No. It's, no, I don't
We
want to
have not
discuss it right
received
now.
the best practice.
You have not received it, which I thought you did from the person, right, yes, sorry.
This is the chart, right, that says
Yes, it's
things
got
and what
that,
we're
how
going to
many points you
do.
get. I mean, we, okay,
I have a
sorry.
deja vu. Didn't we already have this?
This last year.
Yes, we
And it
did.
was the same
Same
situation.
discussion.
Same situation.
Same situation.
Okay.
Sorry.
Number 2, January budget hearing dates.
Yes. So typically, we meet in January to have department heads and non-governmental organizations come before you and present their budgets, ask for funding. You get to ask some questions, et cetera. And I did surface 2 dates. I think that it kind of, Mr. McGehee wanted to add some additional thoughts to it. But these were 2 dates that I thought would be good, you know. Yes.
Yeah, so the conversation that I've had with Mr. Manning is the possibility of adding an additional Saturday to the process, incremental to when we have budget conversations during our normal Tuesday meetings. My assessment, based on my first year through the budget process, I feel that would be an opportunity for all of us to go back and revisit some of the presentations that happened over the first 2 Saturdays, and then revisit some of the line items and have a deeper conversation in the possibility of making some reductions or solidifying what we were not unsure about by receiving incremental information. And usually during our township committee meetings, there's so many other issues on the table that I felt like just having something solely focused, on our town budget, which is such an important part of what we do, really on a daily basis, if you will, that would be a good use of our time. To recommend, if possible and within statute, to have another Saturday, a 3rd Saturday added to the budget process where we would go back and revisit some of the budgets.
So would this be a 3rd Saturday in the sort of, almost right after the 2nd Saturday, or would this be with some time in between so that Mr. Manning, Mr. Uribe, people on the finance committee, I guess I would be okay with a 3rd Saturday, and I think, having that extra time might be valuable, but I think that we'll need to have enough time between the 2nd Saturday and the 3rd Saturday for there to be able to sort of tell.
I agree. It wasn't to have 3 in a row, but to have an additional Saturday to go back and revisit the previous Saturdays and other information that could be disseminated to us after those first initial Saturdays.
So why don't you take a look at the calendar? I agree. What are the dates we're talking about now?
The 20th and the 27th of January are the 3rd and 4th. And that's pretty much the long day. But we get a lot accomplished. And then we could, let me see what other Saturdays are available. We're lucky because typically you have to introduce your budget by the second meeting or the 14th, approximately the 14th of February, but that hasn't for the last 8 years, has been pushed off at least a month. So we do have some time, and it gives you extra time to think and ask additional questions. So a great idea, and I'll let you know. It's either going to be the 10th.
What about like the fourth Tuesday night, since we don't usually have?
That's a, what do you say?
No offense, but.
What?
Saturday in the month of January is not my ideal.
Okay, well, yeah, that would be the 27th of February.
That would be between, so if we moved them up to like the wait, how many Saturdays are there in the month?
Typically 4.
Well, sometimes
Some
there's
there's
5 in January.
Yes, no, there's not in January, no.
But if in January, so the idea would be that we would meet the 3rd and 4th Saturdays in January, and then a few weeks later, after sort of the, departments had a chance to go through their process, you had a chance.
Answer questions.
We could then come back and sort of take a holistic view.
Yes.
Later in February. I think that sounds great. And whether it would be on a Saturday or whether it would be on a Tuesday night, I'm for it either way.
Or on a regular meeting night that we have if we have a really light agenda.
I don't think we
I don't
can
think
count
that's
on
going to
that.
happen. So let's
trying to
look at some dates.
Okay.
Then we can send them out.
Okay, but what about the 20th and the 27th of January?
We've already sent those out, right? Yeah, I think those are.
All right.
Usually,
one more.
We usually allocate 2 Saturdays in the month for this.
Well, and the one more will either be a Saturday or a Tuesday.
Got
it, Joe?
I got it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McGahee.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. You have the next item also, car and bus idling.
So I wanted to bring this discussion to my fellow colleagues. As you know, we have an ordinance on the books that talks about idling of cars and trucks for 3 minutes. That's the standard, and that's not supposed to occur anymore. It's supposed to cease. And as we talk about being environmentally friendly community, it's been brought to my attention, and I've also seen it myself, where we have municipal as well as residential vehicles and trucks that are idling throughout our town. I've had conversations, brief conversations with Acting Chief Duvall. I've talked to Mr. Bell, who's here this evening as well. And I've sent a notice to Elizabeth Baker, the president of the school board. What I'd like to see is us to start to revisit that particular statute and start to look to reinforce that. We have a lot of idling at the train station, and I can understand if it's cold weather or inclement weather, but it's 75 degrees out and these cars are idling, waiting for people to come off the trains, and the jitneys as well. I don't know if Mr. Bell wants to take a minute and talk about some of the things that he's thinking about implementing in terms of idling of our jitneys.
Good evening, everyone. Calvin Bell, Director of Public Works. Concerning the idling of vehicles, idling is very dangerous. It has very numerous adverse effects. First and foremost, it's dangerous to everyone's health. The idling of vehicles emits carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, other carcinogenic matter. Secondly, it's extremely wasteful. According to the EPA, idling, if you idle a vehicle for 1 hour, that's the equivalent of using 1 gallon of gas. Over the course of the year, according to EPA documents, we lose over 1 billion gallons in fuel at the cost of over $3 billion per year. So, brought to my attention by Frank, I'll have to do what's necessary to try to reduce it as far as Public Works is concerned. We have a total of 54 vehicles, 6 jitneys, many heavy-duty trucks, cars, tractors, everything. So as far as the jitneys are concerned, while there are state laws that allow buses to a 15-minute window for the boarding and discharging the passengers, I will speak to my drivers and make sure that they are aware that outside of those parameters, barring extreme heat or extreme cold, that we will not be idling the jitneys randomly. As far as the rest of my staff, only one vehicle really needs for it to be operating or idling while it's stationary. That would be our boom trucks or our bucket trucks. That needs to have the power to generate our hydraulics on that truck. But outside of that, all of our other vehicles can be shut down whenever they're stationary. So I will address this with my staff, and hopefully we can see some improvement. If anybody has any questions.
I don't. I appreciate it. I'm glad that we had the conversation and we're bringing it to the forefront of my colleagues. I think it's an important measure in terms of sustainability and being green. And, I plan to have follow-up conversations with Acting Chief Duvall to make sure he stops an idling of our police vehicles as well.
And just one other point, at the Township Sustainability meeting, our prosecutor reported that she has instructed the police to focus on idling and wants to do more in enforcement of idling, particularly at some of our convenience stores where people are idling, the 7-Elevens, Wawa, things like that.
Another location you might want to look into is Camptown Road. There's a lot of tractor trailers always idling on that block, so that might be a place you want to start also.
So can I ask my colleagues on the Township Committee, when we talk about allowing a turn on red from 11 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning at the corner of Baker, instead of idling at the corner for a minute and a half, you might want to think green on that aspect too.
I would say to my colleague that if there's a light that keeps you idling for 15 minutes or more, I say we go that turn on red.
No, but if you multiply the minute and a half that you sit there before, the minute that you sit there before the walk light turns to a flashing hand, and then it starts counting down from 30 seconds, that minute and a half times cars sitting at that light when there are 0 pedestrians walking, especially children at midnight. I'm just saying.
My recollection, though, my recollection is that we said we were going to revisit.
We are going to revisit it, and when we revisit it, I want you to think about the idling.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you. Anything else on that?
No, thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much. The library expansion plan, so just give all of us a heads up as to how we would like to move forward from the library perspective. We had the presentation last week of the architect Sage and Kuhn. There was a packed house at the library, and we went through it, we answered questions. There's going to be clearly more give and take between community members and library staff. We've put the information on the library website. There is I guess there's a video of the movement that's there. There's actually a virtual tour that's on a loop there, and so that's going to be going. So in any event, the linchpin here is the November 7th bond issue for library funding on the state ballot, and we're hoping that that gets passed. That's really the only way to move forward with this plan, because we're looking for a state, local, private, combination of dollars to go forward. On December 5th at our Township Committee meeting, excuse me, we will have the results of that election, the bond election. We'll know if it passed or not. We'll have maybe a little better sense of some thinking in Trenton. And what we'd like to do is come back to the Township Committee, have a discussion about our feelings about the library proposal. We will include in the discussion from the seat here, whoever wins the new member of the Township Committee for 2018, so that he could give his input also. And then we will make a decision as to how we want to instruct the library, whether it's a go and they should continue to move forward with planning and work with their architects. Any bonding for this would take place in 2018 at best. maybe towards the end of the year. So we'd have to factor that in our conversations about budgeting. Okay? Great, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, and this may be too early to determine, it may be sort of caught up in your general, we'll have a better sense of what's going on in Trenton, but if the measure is approved on November 7th, is the funding automatic up to a certain level, or will it depend on how, or is there a pool, and it will depend on how many people are sort of coming in to take advantage? Like, will we have a, how solid of a sense will we have in December of how much money we can likely count on, or are there going to be too many variables at that point?
I think there are going to be too many variables. We know it's 125 million. We know that libraries that received money in the past will not be eligible this time.
And we have not.
We have not. Okay. Princeton has, Montclair has. We know that libraries have to be fully funding or even doing more. We are. So we have a good shot now. You know, are we going to get $10 million out of the 125? That's unknown. There is no plan B. What will happen is if we don't attain the money that we need, then we will go back and start paring things down. But I think it's fair to say that we would expect to receive something from the bond issue. I don't think the way it's written, it's a one-for-one match. Whether they'll match the entire amount we have, I don't know. We will be shovel ready, so we'll have a leg up on other municipalities.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is a statement supporting the retention of local and state tax exemption in the proposals for revising the federal tax code. In New Jersey, 45% of those who file returns claim a state and local tax. Connecticut is also 45%, and the only state that is higher than us is Maryland with 50%. So we're right up there. Quite a lot of people in our state do claim that state and local tax because our property tax is the primary funding of schools, and it's quite high across the state, no matter where you are. Additionally, proposals that are put forth have been studied by the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, and they say that 30% of taxpayers with incomes between $50,000 and $150,000 will see a tax increase. That's the sweet spot of Maplewood. And for households, it's those that between $150,000 and $300,000 will see a tax increase. So our community is going to get slaughtered. So I think we ought to take a position against this, the exemption of the state and local taxes, and that we ought to urge all of our representatives throughout the state to oppose the proposals that are on the table right now. Additionally, our president has refused to release his taxes, knowledge of how he will benefit from this. The New York Times has reported that he will, potentially $1 billion of his income would be sheltered through this. So I think we've passed resolutions before, but I think we should also pass a resolution asking the president to release his returns and the returns of his companies so that we're clear about how this proposed tax reform, quote unquote, will impact the president. So I would move a motion to support the retention of local and state tax exemption in the any revision of the federal tax code.
Second that.
You could send it by email to Jared's personal email.
Please call the roll on that.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Lourier?
Yes.
Mr. Lambrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, and I would call on the president to release his and his company tax returns so that we can better understand the impact on him of the proposed federal tax changes. I move that.
Oh, that was separate.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll on that.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mayor, do you have templates of these?
I know. I'll have to get you something.
So
We only could have an attorney who could draw that up for us.
I'll get you something.
maybe we can copyright them.
I'm sure, listen, our welcoming resolution, actually, I think, was just adopted by Passaic County or portions of it.
Are we getting royalties on that?
We're not. We're not. Okay, next up, just, this is a heads up, and it's good news. Number one, we have been approved by the Department of Community Affairs to work with us. They are going to provide state planners to come and work with our stakeholders to create a vision for the future of Maplewood Village. We had a preliminary meeting with them last week. We did a tour of the village, and this will incorporate many suggestions which have been put forward as to limitations on development, formula-based businesses, the historic designation of Maplewood Village. So we're looking at all that, and this will be a process working with the planners over the next year or so, or 6 months to a year, so that we would at the end have a vision that we would be able to look at and help guide us as we re-examine the master plan and create any kind of economic development plan going forward. And this is a free service by the Department of Community Affairs. And the second free service we are receiving is from the Department of Transportation, and that is a pedestrian safety and traffic calming plan. And we have received, with this, instead of state employees working with us, they fund a firm called NV5. It's a planning firm, and they will be working with us on Prospect Street, Burnett Avenue, Valley Street, and a couple of other roads in town to look at ways in which we can and improve the safety of pedestrians. And Prospect Street would be the primary street or the priority street that we're working on, and we have a group of about 5 residents that will be working with us as we, in addition to engineering, DPW, police, as we go forward on this. So this is both 2 good grants, if you will, from the state of New Jersey to help us with some important areas here in Maplewood. Okay. And last up on discussion items is the crane safety ordinance.
The crane safety ordinance that was discussed at the last meeting, Aaron Rice and Mr. Desiderio have had exchanges back and forth. Mr. Desiderio still is not comfortable with it, so Ms. Rice called me this afternoon and asked if this could be tabled while she and her attorneys work on it to try to alleviate some of the concerns of our attorney. So that's the discussion.
That's it. That was a quick one. We get a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor?
Yep.
With regard to Resolution 184-17, which is the auction, Mr. Manning brought to my attention that he'd like a provision to be added to that that says that if any property is not otherwise sold, it may be disposed of, either for scrap or garbage, because we will have made a good faith attempt to obviously sell it, and this way he can move forward with that. So I'd ask that be amended on 184-17 to basically say that in the event that there is not a sale of the product, it may be otherwise disposed of or recycled.
Okay, can we get a motion on the consent agenda with the change in resolution 184-17?
So moved.
Second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier? Yes. Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mrs. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, next up, Mr. Manning, I'm sorry. Next up is our second public comment. Is there anyone who wants to address the Township Committee?
I wasn't planning on speaking a second time, but Erin Scherzer, 49 Oberlin, and I'm speaking in my capacity as a taxpayer and resident only. I did appreciate hearing about the vision for Maplewood Village and the free support offered by the state. I'm incredibly happy about that. I would encourage the township to include Springfield Avenue and Irvington. I think we, as a municipality, need to move away from just focusing on the village and looking at our economic development as an entire town. Unfortunately, the 4.5 years that I've lived here, I've seen the ups and downs of Springfield Avenue, many positive changes led by this township, and then businesses that just can't. And we need to look at the overall strategy so that people are using the incredible businesses that are there and that we can encourage more. And so sometimes I hope that even though it's a free service, they'd be willing to do a little bit of add-on for our beloved Springfield Avenue and the Irvington line. Thank you.
So just to give you the answer, we asked them, they said they cannot do that. They can only focus on one area, but they will look at that area in the context of the other.
Perhaps change it to the other areas of town. I mean, it's hard to find a parking spot in the village on Springfield Avenue. Sky's the limit as to where you are able to park.
Yeah, this doesn't preclude future work with them, but the first step is really a response that we received from the Maplewood Village Alliance because of these pressures that are coming from various entities.
The pressure coming from, I'm sorry.
Various entities, the Historic Preservation and others. And so it doesn't preclude going back to the state and working on Springfield Avenue or Irvington Avenue.
No, I understand those pressures, but at the same time, there are residents that have been speaking up about Springfield Avenue itself. And actually, both organizations, both the Maplewood Village Alliance and the Springfield Avenue Partnership, are headed by, until recently, the same individuals. So I just, in terms of resource allocation, I would, if there's any way we can get an add-on here and look at the overall picture, I'd appreciate just another push. We were able to get another push on this police agreement. Hopefully we can get another push there.
I don't want to lead you. We were asked and we were told no.
We asked specifically, I asked when I got to the meeting and that was the answer. And understand that I think you people know better than many that the village is not always just always focusing on the village. In this particular case, as the mayor alluded to, there was a desire to get a historic designation for Maplewood Village from the Historic Preservation Commission. There was a new building, obviously, much publicized. There are other buildings that are in, not necessarily great shape. So there was a desire from the Village Alliance, where the impetus for this came from. That Sid asked the Township Committee to try to revisit what the overall vision is, and do we want tear downs, and what are our restrictions with height. So it goes into sort of more of a planning thing for the village and taking into consideration. So I don't think, because the 2-mile stretch of Springfield Avenue, and like Mayor said, I think it's something we can definitely go back to, and I think it would be different in a year or two from now to go look at what's going on in Springfield Avenue after some of the major residential that's happening, and see what that takes to it. So there's a lot of evolution going on there, and this is sort of pre-planning to be cognizant and in preparation for somebody buying the Toomey's lot and wanting to put a 5-story building. Like, what are our limitations? What do we see for the village? So that's where this came from, and so.
Well, I appreciate that perspective, Ms. Adams, and I look forward to going forward that there be that coordination that is happening, particularly as the leadership of both SIDS is changing.
Right.
And so more coordination on that front, I think, would be helpful, and also including the other commercial strips, Ridgewood Row and Irvington Avenue as well.
And that one, Irvington Avenue area, we just received the grant, correct?
Yeah, to make some physical improvements on Irvington Avenue.
For the and all of it is in Maplewood, whereas the last time we received the grant, most of it went, right?
Well, there's still a grant that's multiple towns, and then there's a grant for the intersection at Parker and Irvington Avenue.
So we're planning physical improvements, major ones on Irvington Avenue Commercial District, so.
But we hear you.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
hear-
I know you guys here, I just,
Yeah.
thank you.
You don't need to twist my arm about
No,
Springfield
not for our
Avenue.
neighborhood, right?
Okay. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Thank goodness. Okay, next up, Mr. Manning.
Just one item.
How's the farmer's market going?
I can guess.
Yes, great, Karnak.
No, Mr. Manning has two items.
No, does he? Uh-oh. Okay, well, the first one is to remind everyone that the farmer's market, which is still operating and
Where is it?
it's on Springfield Avenue on the north side between Yale and Oberlin. It's the empty lot. And they have great fall produce. I went there this week and it was packed with people. So they're really doing well. There's a lot of parking in the back. So please, come on down and
I
shop
think in
there.
a prior life, Mr. Manning,
I'm
in a
a
prior life,
farmer.
Mr. Manning may have been born on a farm. I
Yeah,
just have a sense.
Mr. Manning, you
Yes.
want to present to us a resolution of a grievance with the PBA?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I gave you, here it is, I'm sorry, a resolution, a way of resolving a grievance concerning the acting captain's position, and I'm asking that you accept it and that we go forward with an agreement with PBA SOI.
And this is going to allocate a sum of money.
So we're going to allocate
$14,000.
$14,000 to resolve the grievance, and from them that they will, I guess each of the officers will sign away any right to future grievances on
Yeah,
this
I'm
issue.
sure that Mr. Genova's office will prepare appropriate documents, right?
Okay.
Yes.
So I will move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier? Yes. Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Anything else from Mr. Manning?
No. Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Desiderio?
I have no report, Mayor, but I will be drafting an ordinance with regard to police promotions. Is that correct?
That is correct,
For the
for
next-
2017.
You are correct.
For the, you wanted to have a sunset?
No, for the process beginning in
Okay.
2017.
And then then it could be amended thereafter. Okay. It'll
Yes.
be on for the next meeting. I have nothing else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything? Yes.
Just one thing, just to clarify, I know we had a little bit of confusion about the date for our upcoming code committee meeting. It was, last meeting, we discussed it being on the 9th. I neglected to realize that that's actually a floating holiday, and our code director says, the construction director is taking that day, so we will not be meeting on the 9th, and
Yeah.
the mayor and
You
Ms.
suggested, you sent me an email, you sent me an email suggesting some dates, and I was not in my office, so.
It's the 10th.
The 10th, the
Well,
next day.
we're going to
I'm not sure.
wait
The
until and
answer is
see
I'm
if
going to try to do
Mr.
it. I just don't know
Desiderio
if I
is
can do it.
available.
Well-
Okay.
I will know in the morning.
Okay, so this is the issue. We have other things to talk about. So once you move around dates, that you bump up against other dates. So if Mr. Desiderio isn't available, why don't we meet and deal with some of those other issues?
Okay.
On the
I
10th.
think,
On the
I
10th.
think it highly unlikely I have a conflict for 7 o'clock.
7:30 in the morning.
7:30 in the morning.
You
so.
just have to get up
I
early.
just,
Yeah.
right, so.
Yeah.
All right, then why don't we just say we'll meet on the 10th at 7:30?
7:30 a.m.
7:30, it's ridiculous.
Great. Ms. Fritzen?
Couple things, Mayor. 2 weeks from tonight is the last day to register to vote for the election. If you're unregistered voter, the clerk's office is open straight through that day from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. So that would be the last day to register to vote. Absentee ballots, October 31st, a good way to remember that. It's Halloween. And again, if you ever have a change of address or information, you need to re-register to vote. The volunteer appreciation dinner for 2017, we've been doing this annually, is Wednesday, October 25th at the Woodland. And invitations have just gone out. And we added a few more volunteer groups, recommendations from the Township Committee that maybe haven't been included in the past, but will be this time. So I think we're going to have a nice turnout. We've had a great turnout in the last couple of years. And I would like the meeting to end shortly because...
What's the score?
4-3 Yanks.
Okay.
It's a
So-
slugfest.
So
right
just
now.
commit to, we need to move
What in?
forward on the boards and committees renewals.
It's just
Right, this is-
October now.
This is October.
Right,
So let's get the letters out. Let's not wait too long, okay?
okay.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate you, Mayor, keeping it up to date throughout the year.
Okay.
And I hope you'll do that again.
All right.
I have two quick questions for you.
Yes.
The first is, how late are we open for voter registration on the 17th?
9 PM.
Okay. The other is, can you clarify for us, because we have Election Day and we also have League in November,
Okay, I can.
the dates of the November Township Committee meetings?
Okay, so the Township Committee meeting for November, due to Election Day being Tuesday, November 7th, our Township Committee meeting already advertised is Wednesday, November 8th. The League of Municipalities does not interfere one bit with the Township Committee meeting this year.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so the second meeting in November is the 21st? The 8th and the 21st? Okay.
Every other year, we don't have a conflict. This year, there's no conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Reports from elected officials. Let's start with Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a very brief report tonight. I would like to congratulate Jennifer Coleman, who is our newly selected chair of the Pool Advisory Committee. And we look forward to the things we can do at the pool under her leadership and with the other volunteers on the pool committee. And I have no other report.
Thank you.
Is that for the short brevity? Oh.
Okay. Mrs. Larrier. We've never had a Township Committee person's report applauded before, so it's very good.
I thought it was because...
Mrs. Larrier.
Let it be noted who was first.
Yes, no, we understand. Mrs. Larrier.
No report. I actually gave my report during the Board of Health
Okay,
meeting.
that might get some applause too. Ms. Adams.
Oh, Mayor, just want to remind everybody, or please mark your calendar, and especially our elected officials and our Department of Public Works chair or not chair, director and assistant director, or anybody, and administration. Mr. Manning and I have been working on a half-day workshop at the Woodland on Tuesday, October 17th at 9 a.m. to 1:30. Breakfast and lunch are included. Basically, what we want to do is reduce carbon pollution and noise and all that. You know, we talk about electric cars, we talk about charging stations for electric cars, when the reality is that the changeover to electric cars is probably a little more slow than we could achieve changing from gas-powered lawn maintenance equipment like leaf blowers and lawn mowers and all that. So this is both for residents and commercial entities. We are reaching out to landscape maintenance companies and all that, and I urge anyone who's around to go or send their landscaper to it. There's growth in this industry, and it's reducing the carbon footprint and noise and protect our public health and our children's health and save money. So that's October 17th, 9 a.m. to 1:30. That's all I have, Mayor. Oh, no, I have one other thing. The Jitney 20th anniversary celebration, which was delayed because of the New Jersey Transit mess this summer, is now scheduled for 9 a.m. on October 24th at the Maplewood train station. One of the residents who was integral in getting the Jitney program started. I believe we're reaching out to Mickey Stern's widow to also come. He was on the Township Committee and pushed the Jitney service. So that's a little celebration at 9 a.m. on October 24th at the train station. Be there or be square.
Will there
That's all I
be
have.
Abel Baker cookies shaped like a jitney?
No, that's up to Greg's.
I doubt it.
That's Greg's thing.
Mr. McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really quickly, this next Saturday will be the Green Day Fair in Memorial Park from 11 to 4 o'clock. Please come out and learn about sustainability in our environment. And I will defer to our mayor regarding an event on Springfield Avenue this week. I'm sure he'll talk about that. And I just want to recognize the Jack and Jill of America Essex County chapter for a wonderful event at the high school on Sunday about the digital divide, which is important in terms of our schools and the lack of technology in some of our households here in South Orange and Maplewood. And finally, I also want to recognize Midtown Direct for a phenomenal event that they held yesterday at the Woodland regarding Billy Strayhorn, who's a musician. It's a play, it's a reading, it was amazing, and hopefully it will one day make Broadway. And that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Could you hand those flyers out at Green Day, please? Thank you.
Okay. I just have 6 items.
Oh, applaud for you.
Yeah, absolutely not. So New Jersey Transit has been informed by Amtrak that there are going to be closures of 3 tracks for 30 days each. Track 15 in February, track 14 in April, and track 13 in May. We've written, I've called together, had a call of elected officials on the Morrison-Essex line. I wrote a letter to sent an email to the executive director of New Jersey Transit asking for a meeting. I've not received a response yet. We'll follow up, but our plan is to meet with the director and his staff to understand how any of these potential closures might impact the M&E line. Also, the underpass at the train station, work has started on it. I had a conversation with Mr. Leone from the Community Affairs Division. Mr. McGehee and I are meeting with him on October 9th to look at it, but they've replaced the lights. They put new lights there. Today they were sandblasting and working on some of the plaster that has fallen apart and falling off there. So we're going to get a better sense of how they're going to make permanent repairs there. Number 2, the Township Sustainability Committee, I want to alert you that our team is moving forward with the electric aggregation, community electric aggregation. Before the end of the year, we will have an ordinance before us that has us join the consortium with other municipalities and also be the lead agency. We agreed to that in principle before. Now we're getting down to making decisions about that. Again, that will be buying residential electric for our community and somewhere in the vicinity of 5 or 6 other communities. It will be at a lower cost than the electric that is provided by PSC&G, and will have a higher green portion of production. Number 3, we received the final report from Manitou Incorporated, and this is the study of the South Orange and Maplewood Fire Departments and the possibility of consolidation, merger, or sharing of services. The report is on the Township website. I urge you to take a look at it. It's quite extensive, but if you want to, there's a summary. The summary is pretty clear, and you can find that, I think, on page 7. And it says here, our findings are clear. The communities of Maplewood and South Orange would be better served by combining their fire departments into a single entity. We will begin negotiations with South Orange. We also will be having a two-town presentation on this, tentatively scheduled for October 26th. Ms. Fritzen, has anybody contacted you about that, October 26th from South Orange?
No, sir.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll follow up on that. Number 4, October 21st is our next talk to the Township Committee. It will be on Irvington Avenue at the 7-Eleven. After that, there's going to be a ribbon cutting and a tour of the Boyden Avenue apartment building on the corner of Boyden and Peskin. So that'll be at noon. There'll be a community open house. We'll invite the community there so they can walk through that. Again, that'll be on Saturday, October 21st. Next, Springfield Avenue, this Thursday night from 7 to 10 in the parking lot of Wine Barrel. There'll be a craft beer and food festival. It should be a lot of fun. Come on out. The weather's supposed to be really great. And then also Saturday from 11 to 7 up next to the Hilton branch of the library, there's the Health and Harvest Festival. So come on out there. It's a great time. There's plenty of music and fun, and many of our merchants are there and others. There's performances, so come on out that Saturday, and also come for the fundraiser on Thursday night is to support the Public Art Initiative, which is murals on Springfield Avenue. And then finally, my office hours are next Tuesday, October 10th, from 7 to 8 p.m. here in Town Hall.
4 to 4, top of the third.
And anyone want to applaud what I just said, that would be fine. If not, that's fine too. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. And we'll see you at the next meeting, October 17th.
Liz, it's 4-4.
Thank